Guys, let's start with a very interesting story from Can I Please Be a Cat? Take you to court? Why, I didn't know you felt that way. This chain of events started almost 20 years ago and involves myself and a notoriously snooty national real estate agency. There is a bit of background leading to the MC incident, so please bear with me. This all occurred in Queensland, Australia. I once rented a property through an agency from 2004 to 2006. Due to my ex-partner's explosive and violent temper, we had been handed an eviction notice. There was damage to the property that was unfixed at the time we were evicted. Damage that was in the form of fist and hammer-sized holes in walls, etc. We obviously did not receive any of the bond deposit back as the repair costs more than absorbed the amount. There was also an added sum of about $1,700 extra to cover the rest of the costs incurred repairing the damage. This amount was forwarded to a debt collections agency. This collection amount was in both of our names as we had jointly been on the lease agreement. I was not upset at the agency. They were just doing their job by being a good advocate for the owner of the property at this stage. Taking the bond and charging us for the repair was standard and not nasty, vindictive, or overkill in the slightest. My anger came later. Although I must admit I was a bit miffed to be duly held financially responsible for the damage caused by my ex, but due to the nature of the joint lease, not much could be legally done. I was just grateful we had parted ways not long after. A few years post-eviction, I wanted to get my life more organised in many areas and tie up any loose ends that would impede me moving forward. A clean slate, so to speak. So the debt issue came first. After many phone calls and some paperwork exchange, plus an escalation or two, the debt collection agency finally agreed to split the $1,700 damages bill between the ex and myself. Now I could pay off half and not be held accountable for his portion any longer. This had to be done without his consent, as he refused. I'm unsure as to why, possibly hoping I would pay the whole lot to rebuild my credit rating, or most likely just to be annoying. Once I had paid off my portion of the collector's debt, I thought I was done with the whole business and the black mark against my name. Not so, unfortunately. It turned out that the state I lived in had a blacklist that real estate agencies and lessors could add tenants' names to. It's called the TICA list. All they needed was proof that the tenant had behaved in a bad enough manner regarding renting of a property to warrant being listed. Due to the fact we had been evicted, the damage, and also owed arrears to a debt agency for repairs, we unfortunately qualified. Being on this list made it almost impossible to rent, especially via a real estate agency. After speaking extensively with the RTA, which is a government agency, I found I was definitely eligible to have my name removed from the list, so I started taking action for this to happen. I was able to demonstrate good faith by having paid for half of the damages. It also went in my favour that my partner was abusive, and there was legal evidence of this fact. However, I was told the only way to have my name removed was by the real estate agency. So I approached them and asked for them to do so. They were very helpful initially. If I was able to show them proof that the debt was settled, they were happy to remove my name. At least 7 years had elapsed by this point, so it was considered punishment enough. At the time, after 5 years, your name is usually removed from the TICA list. However, this company apparently kept tabs on who they had added to the list, and when the person's 5 years expired, they just added them again. Dirty tactics indeed. Obviously, I had been re-added. So I provided relevant documents to the agency and was assured my name would be removed as soon as they located my file. This apparently had been stored away in archives, as much time had passed since I rented with them. I was told this would take a week maximum. All good. So I called a week later and was told to wait another week, still in a kind, helpful and cordial tone. I called again after that time and was told to wait, you guessed it, another week, and this time I detected a tone of frost in the reply. So I called back more than a week later just to show patience, and now was spoken to in a very haughty manner. I was informed that my request was bothersome, being so because what I asked was not important and finding my file was a waste of their staff time. They would call me when they got around to it. I expressed how important it was personally, and then heard the magic words, almost verbatim. If you want us to do this so badly, we will only be forced to help you if ordered. Perhaps you should take us to court if you can't be patient. Goodbye. String me along. Okay, game on. I had a feeling this was all done to avoid removing my name as they had found my file. Also that they were stalling and wanted me to stay blacklisted. But I wasn't backing down without a fight, and so I took their advice. I filed against them to have the matter seen in a small claims court. It cost me $35, which would be reimbursed by the agency if I won. I didn't have anything to lose, and I wanted them to know that not all people will hold indefinitely or continue to be unjustly punished for longer than fair. It was listed to appear in about 4 days from filing. As soon as they received the court date paperwork, I was suddenly bombarded with phone calls. How dare I take the agency to court when they were working their hardest to find my file and help me? Doing my best to sound apologetic for taking their advice, I thanked them for the suggestion, as it seemed there would now be a time frame at least for the matter to be dealt with. On the day of court, I had 3 sheets of paper as my sole evidence. A statement showing that repair bill had been paid and there was no finance outstanding. A statement from the RTA that I was eligible to have my name taken off the TICA list. And lastly, a document stating it was at the behest of the real estate agency to remove my name and that they had no good reason not to. Not one, but 2 agents for the company showed up to court. When it came before the judge, both parties had to give evidence if relevant. I handed in my 3 pages. Seeing them pass the judge, a thick folder of paperwork, including photos of the property damage, was rather amusing considering they supposedly couldn't find my file when last requested. The judge asked them for a statement. They went on for a few minutes about why I didn't deserve to be removed, and justified their stance with the photos and prior rental history with them. All I had to reply was that I had paid for my share of the damage, that the damage was due to my abusive ex, and that I had made restitution as much as I could regard the matter, with no money owing. The judge then asked why I'd brought it to court. I explained that the company was dragging their feet removing my name when it was a simple matter, and it wasn't necessarily fair to do so. That I had called them repeatedly and waited while they found my so-hard-to-locate paperwork that had somehow miraculously appeared when convenient. That being on the TICA list was harmful to my future chances at renting, and also that my name had been resubmitted after dropping off the list. The judge queried them why they had added my name again. They stated it was company policy. The judge expressed agreement with my stance. I had been punished enough, had made financial restitution, and now that my file had been located, I was not to be blacklisted anymore. Case decided in my favor. Win! The real estate agency was given 48 hours to submit proof to the court, and a copy to myself, that I was now off the list. Also, they had to pay for the $35 I spent taking them to court. The pair of agents walked out in a huff and was on the phone out in the hallway immediately after vacating the courtroom. I floated past them as I was on a justice high. As I got to the lifts, I thanked them for coming and their sound advice in recommending court. Also, that I was grateful for the bottle of wine they would be buying me with the $35 I was to be paid back. The look on their faces was priceless. The revenge was perfect. And this is what the agency deserved. The agency wanted to blackmail OP and extract money from him, but OP stood for his right, and through legal means, he inflicted a stunning revenge on the agency. The revenge was really satisfying. The next story from Chainsmoker Magic. Customer thought we were moving her stuff too slow and wearing her tone, so we hurried up. Edit. Title should read, Wasting Her Time. Not wearing her tone, sorry. Super tired from work when I wrote this and I missed the autocorrect. So I work as a mover for a very small moving company. My boss, let's call him Mike, is a really nice guy. It's really just a 2-man operation. with me working as a subcontractor under him with a few regular guys we call in for bigger moves. It's really physically demanding work sometimes, but typically our customers are super nice and the pay is pretty good. Most people are just happy to have someone else to lift their heavy stuff and get it into a truck. And we're always super careful to not cause any damage to the buildings we're moving in and out of or the items we're moving, which most people appreciate. Not this lady. Let's call her Darcy. So Darcy booked a move with Mike and told him she had a small storage unit she wanted us to load up into a 20-foot truck. We said, no problem. As the date of her move approached, though, so did a huge snowstorm. Days before her move, the news started reporting that the weather was expected to take a severe turn for the worst. Not uncommon for the time of year in our state, but also something not to be trifled with. We called Darcy a couple days before the move to see about rescheduling to avoid the storm, and she said she absolutely had to move that day. No other days would work. A lot of, probably much smarter movers would have cancelled, but after talking, Mike and I thought it was no big deal. We move in the snow all the time. Just meant we would have to dress appropriately and be extra careful not to injure ourselves or damage any property. Cut to the day of the move. We get to Darcy's storage unit, expecting a 10 by 10 by 15 standard storage unit full of your usual stuff based on what she'd indicated on the phone, and load it into a 20-foot truck. That's a pretty easy job to get done in the 2 hours that she'd already prepaid for. As we pulled up, the snow was already coming down pretty heavily, and the first thing that made us nervous was the truck. Instead of a 20-foot truck, there was a huge 26-foot truck. Darcy greeted us by the truck and showed us the storage unit. Darcy: okay, so this is our unit. We shut down our businesses and I'm moving it out of town to pursue other opportunities. And I need all of this loaded up in 2 hours. The last movers I had got it unloaded in about that long. Mike said something about the truck being bigger than she told us. Darcy: yeah, it's the biggest one U-Haul had. Last time we used another company and it was much bigger. I'm worried about getting it all, but you guys will have to figure it out. I need all of it. This was a huge storage unit, like the kind you'd store a few cars or some farm equipment in. When we opened it up, it was filled with what appeared to be the contents of a couple of pretty decently sized businesses. A dozen of those huge floor-to-ceiling filling cabinets, several desks, office chairs, some really huge glass tables. And all of it was incredibly heavy. Now, our company's safety guidelines for weight limits are 100 pounds per person lifting an item. But there's no real practical way to enforce that in the field, so we usually wind up using our best judgment, even if the item is over that limit. Nearly everything there was over limit, but we had our equipment and we were pretty confident we could handle everything weight-wise. Mike and I are both pretty strong, but in my estimation, this was definitely going to take a bit longer than 2 hours. Mike told her that we would do our absolute best. To be fair, he should have leveled with her then and there that it would take a bit more time, but he probably wanted to see if we could just get it busted out as quick as possible and see where we were at before getting the customer needlessly worried. Darcy sat in her truck nearly the whole time we were working so she could stay warm. Perfectly understandable since it was -2 degrees Fahrenheit outside and the snow was coming down pretty hard, though she'd occasionally roll down her window to offer up critiques. Mostly about how much time we were taking going up and down the metal ramp of the truck, which was now covered in ice and snow. About an hour and some change into the move, Darcy gets out of her truck and starts chatting with Mike about her previous movers and how they did cause some damage to her stuff, but they were so fast. It was weird. She went back and forth between complaining about them and praising them for their speed, and she kept referring to them as the professional moving service I hired, which really bugged me, because the way she said it seemed to be implying that because we aren't a big national company like Mayflower, then somehow Mike and I weren't professional movers, despite the fact that this is literally our full-time jobs. Now we're far enough into this move that we could tell this was going to run long. Mike decides it's a good idea to let her know that it's probably going to take a half hour or so longer than expected, which was still a feat considering how much there was to move and how well packed this truck was. I pride myself on playing a mean game of truck Tetris. Darcy was not having this. She started to get upset and started saying how we were just trying to get more money out of her, and we were dilly-dallying. Yes, those words actually left the mouth of a grown woman. Then she starts in on how the professional movers got this same stuff unloaded in 2 hours. It should take the same time to load it. Mike explains to her that unloading always takes less time than loading, because you're moving it into a bigger space and you don't have to pack and pad the stuff to fit into a truck. I also mentioned that there's literally a blizzard coming down and we're only going to go a little over. She gets quiet and seething. Mike can tell how angry she is and lets her know we won't charge her for any extra time since it's not her fault the weather's crappy. He also brings up that they damaged her stuff and we've done a pretty good job. Darcy, I don't care. You said 2 hours. I expect it done. Just get it done. I'm going to leave you guys a terrible review. She stomps back to her truck without saying a word. I'm usually pretty chill, but I was already getting increasingly mad at this woman. Her yelling at my boss and calling us lazy when we were risking our health and safety to move her stuff in a blizzard was just too much for me. Mike thinks about this for a moment. I know customer reviews are super important to us as a small business. The booking site we use highlights the last handful of reviews, so a bad one takes forever to stop showing up as basically the first thing people see when they click on your page. So I'm expecting Mike to try and keep her happy, but instead he just grins and turns to me. Mike, it, you heard her. Cue malicious compliance. She wanted it all loaded in 2 hours? That's exactly what we do. The front half of her truck was loaded up neatly, with everything padded and stacked tightly floor to ceiling to keep it from moving on the road. I pride myself on my ability to load a truck properly and safely without wasting any space. The second half of her truck was the worst, jankiest truck I've ever loaded in my life. We're talking huge, heavy office furniture haphazardly stacked on top of each other at the weirdest angles. Heavy stuff on top of light stuff, anything to just get the storage unit empty and the truck door closed. We even stacked really heavy office chairs on top of glass tabletops. By the end of it, the truck looked like you'd ask Escher or Geiger to draw you a picture of an office. I just want to be clear. We've never intentionally damaged a customer's property, and we never would. We pride ourselves on our professionalism, courtesy, and specifically our ability to get your stuff where it's going safely. But the particular combination of unsafe conditions and this lady's outright disregard for our safety and feelings was just too much. And technically, we didn't damage anything. Nothing was broken when we closed the truck doors. But literally the first bump in the road, or decently tight turn, was definitely going to cause hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars in damage. We closed the truck door and walked over to Darcy's truck and let her know. Mike went to her truck. He told her that we were done and that he wasn't going to charge her at all for the move. She insisted that she's not poor and doesn't need charity. And Mike just said that it was clear that she wasn't happy and that he didn't need her $150. That's right, we charge $75 per hour. So the extra half hour we needed to do it right would have cost her a whopping $37. He cancelled the job and refunded her what she'd already prepaid. As we drove away in Mike's car, I looked at him. Me. You realize that by the time she gets where she's going, she's looking at a lot of damaged furniture, right? She's going to hit us with a bad review and maybe even try to sue. Mike, she was worried about paying an extra $37. I doubt she'll risk more money on hiring a lawyer. And besides, you can't leave a review on the site if the job gets cancelled. We just gave her exactly what she wanted. And besides, it's worth losing out on the money I would have made just to see her face when I said I didn't need her $150. When he dropped me off, he still paid me for my time because that lady. My boss, Mike, is a really nice guy. The malicious compliance was perfectly executed. The customer demanded the job be done in 2 hours, and OP and his fellow worker loaded the truck in the most chaotic, unsafe manner possible, ensuring everything would likely be damaged. She got exactly what she wanted.